opportunity for faculty, staff, and also I think graduate students to really witness this type of presentation. So I'm going to do a little introduction. Dr. Safai is an assistant professor of nutrition and dietetics at the University of Idaho. She is a nutrition communications professional, a registered dietitian and educator. She's published in various research journals and authored textbook chapters. She loves sharing nutrition information in the media, writes for 2 newspapers, makes appearances on local television networks, and has a series on Eat How Network. CNN, it's very neat. Cian's love of technology and nutrition has helped her focus her research on the use of virtual worlds for nutrition and diabetes education. She and her colleagues have developed a virtual world for individuals with diabetes where they can socialize, play games, share recipes, and other tips for diabetes management.
She has also become a national leader in the use of simulation in teaching medical nutrition therapy to dietetics students. She currently serves, as the Idaho Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. She's the president of that. And she's a member of the University of Idaho Faculty Senate. Sam practices what she preaches by leading a very active lifestyle and has competed in triathlons, duathlons, and road races. She has earned her doctorate in organizational leadership, a master's degree in community health, and a bachelor's degree in dietetics. Her current specialties are media spokesperson, consumer and professional writing, maternal and child health, obesity and weight management, diabetes, simulation and virtual education, and telemedicine. So,
without further ado, Dr. Safai, thank you.
And here we are in the simulation classroom, so that's really appropriate for us to be here. So thanks for having me. And I have, of course, so many slides, so much to say, and just a small amount of time. So I'm just going to whip through stuff and hopefully answer questions that you have at the end. So the presentation is called Linking Nutrition to Technology, or we could say Linking Technology to Nutrition. Of course, that's my avatar there in Second Life, which you'll see more about in a few minutes. But so for the objectives for this talk, because there's so many, it's also meeting my requirements for promotion and tenure, I want to demonstrate the work in teaching, advising, and in community outreach and scholarly activity that I've been doing for the last 5.5 years, and share my research agenda with all of you, and then expose you to technology innovations in dietetics and nutrition, and talk to you a little bit about the future and what the future looks like. So first of all, for teaching, just to give you guys a little bit of background, I teach in the nutrition program, and we have 2 programs. We have nutrition and the nutrition program, which is one section, and then we have the dietetics program, which is another section. I primarily spend most of my time with the seniors in the dietetics program. We have an accredited program from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and we have, there are 250 dietetic internship programs in the United States, but only about 58 coordinated programs in dietetics, which means we have our internship built in. And so for us, that means 1,200 hours of internship built into a 4-5-year program. A lot of our students try to do it in 4 years. So it's pretty intense. And right now we have 20 students that we accept every year. It's highly competitive. And we have a 4-year program in Moscow. They can go 4 years in Moscow, or we have several 2x2 programs. They can go to BSU for 2 years and then come here for their last 2. Go to CSI, come to the U of I for the last 2, or NIC and come to U of I for the last 2. Their senior year is spent in Boise or in Coeur d'Alene, and you'll see the reason why in a few minutes. And then I love this quote. Sort of my teaching philosophy, I think, is pretty much represented in this quote. The greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, the students are now working as if I don't exist. So to me, that really sums up simulation, getting them involved, and I just stand back as a facilitator. So that is my my philosophy. And with teaching, we have 3 areas that we look at. We look at community nutrition, we look at clinical nutrition, and we look at management. So those are our 3 areas of emphasis. Just very quickly, what I teach in the fall is my heavy load, very heavy load. Have I mentioned heavy load? It's really, but in the spring I get to kick back a little bit. I teach medical nutrition therapy, community nutrition, Clinical 1 simulation, which I'll show a snippet of, and then community nutrition supervised practice, where we go out in the communities of both Boise and McCordland, North Idaho and Southern Idaho. And then in the spring, I teach about 19 hours clinical dietetics, global nutrition, which is my campus-wide class. I get to go beyond nutrition and dietetics students, and then management supervised practice. So, a couple of things about simulation that I wanted to mention. So, during the last 15 years, real-life clinical simulations using SimMan have been used all over the United States, but not really in the dietetics field. It's been in nursing and, of course, medicine, but we haven't done a lot. And so with the challenges, when I came on board 5.5 years ago, the challenge was to increase our enrollment and to increase supervised placement sites, both of which were just almost impossible to do. So we looked at doing something that they've been doing in medicine for a long time, and that's simulation. And so I'll show you an example of that, where we do medical nutrition simulation. So can you see this okay, or is it dark? It's dark for me. Okay, so right here is an example of us teaching medical simulation, and we have an agreement that we use jointly with the North Idaho College Simulation Lab, and then the College of Western Idaho Simulation Lab in Boise. And so you can see here, and this screenshot with me in it, we are at NIC. And then if you look in the middle photograph, that's how we teach. We beam from one clinical lab to another clinical lab on the big screen, just like we're doing here. And then again, these are the dietetic students actually interviewing the patient. And the rationale is that decreased clinical sites and preceptors and has made it impossible to get into the hospitals like we did before for long periods of time. And then also we saw a great variance in the clinical experience itself, whereas some students may actually get to sit in or even watch a kidney transplant, like if they're at Sacred Heart, whereas some of the other ones in smaller hospitals, like for example in Moscow, they're lucky if they get a cardiac patient during the whole time that they're there. So by having simulation, we leveled the playing field, and we actually brought the preceptors to them, and that's really important. We have preceptors coming into the lab who are very, very highly qualified from Sacred Heart, from St. Luke's down in Boise, the best of the best. So we've got someone who is nutrition support dietitian who works in only intensive care and ICU at Sacred Heart, and she comes in as one of our preceptors. And in Boise we have one from St. Luke's who's a bariatric specialist, and she comes in. So we really feel like they're getting the best education possible through simulation. And I'll show you what this looks like.
So I'm not feeling that great.
We interview him regarding his disease, his diet, his medical nutrition therapy, and our students get the opportunity to practice. And today we actually were using him we hooked him up to a kangaroo pump, and we were administering a tube feeding. And then we had students practice checking residuals. And one of the most important features of this process is debriefing. When after they do the interview, they can come out and they can talk to their preceptors and see what they did well, what they didn't do well, and then do it over and over and over again until they get it right. In the dietetics program, today we were doing an activity where we hooked him up to a tube feeding. And we administered the tube feeding that went into his stomach. And that was just not only such a great visual, but it let them have hands-on practice of what a tube feeding is. It's something that they won't forget the next time they're in the hospital administering tube feedings as part of the medical nutrition therapy.
So that's just one example of what we do. Let me go back to our slides here. Any questions so far? Of course, every educational experience has a model, and this is our educational foundation model for simulation, which involves the student, the teacher, the educational practices, and then the simulation characteristics, which are part of the design, which feed into the outcomes. And for the dietetics program, we are competency-based. Students either have to meet competencies or they don't. They aren't like given an A, B, or C. They either meet them or they don't. And so with the simulation model, we have teacher-centered facilitation and learning and supportive. The teacher is more of an observer. For those of you, are a lot of you familiar with flipping the classroom concept? Simulation is part of flipping the classroom, where students actually go home and have the lecture and look at the PowerPoints, and then in the simulation day, which is an 8-hour day, they're actually doing hands-on experience, and we are more as facilitators and observers. And the student then is very self-directed and competent, and educational practices are active learning feedback, student faculty interaction. There's a lot of collaboration. It's a very collegial environment among students. I know Marissa has been a part of this, so she knows about it. And I will tell you, and I'm going to use Marissa as an example, one of the really good things about simulation is when the student comes in to the hospital room, we as preceptors, one of us is the sim man and the other one is the grader. And so if you have a student you can tailor the activity, just as we say here in this model, you can tailor the activity to that specific student. So for those of you who know Marissa, or the old Marissa, who was a very linear thinker, say she's giving a low sodium diet, she would come in with her diet order and she would go through sort of a rote, just checking off the list of what she would do for this patient. So we knew she did that very well, and we knew she would do that, A+, because that's Marissa. So we could shake it up a little bit to look at some of her other skills. So I remember one time, I'm going to embarrass you, Marissa, but it's kind of cute. I remember one time she came in and she had her, her file, and she was there talking to the patient, sim man, and she's going through, Mr. Smith, now, do you know what a low sodium diet is? I'm here to instruct you. I'm your dietitian. Now, what do you usually eat at home? And so we said, you're really cute. My grandson is coming in later on. Would you be available to come back and meet him? And she was like, oh. She was frozen. She didn't know what to do.
Well, it's like the sim man whose face is just saying all these things to me.
But it was a good experience for her because it made her think, I have to go off of my sheet. So she had a little bit of interaction with the man, and so we gave her a little bit of skills in that area to see how she did under pressure. And then after the simulation experience, she comes out, and this is the most beautiful part of simulation, and that's something called debriefing, where we sit her down with the two instructors, and we tell her, what do you think you did good? What do you think you didn't do so great? And how do you feel about the experience? And I would say it's something that you never forgot that, did you?
No.
And you never will. So it's a very, very good way to teach. And the debriefing, which is the design characteristics, the debriefing is a very important part of the feedback to the student. The theory behind simulation is related to transformative teaching, where the student attends the MNT class, students attend the class and lecture, or they have a lecture at night, and in that specific MNT area, which may be, we have 7 areas that we practice in: cardiac, GI, diabetes, renal, and other ones that I'm probably forgetting, wound healing, which is big. And then the students complete the simulation in that scenario on the specific MNT area. And then in the clinical setting, once they get into the clinical setting in the spring, they're then able to transfer their MNT knowledge and their simulation experience into the clinical setting so they can actually function as a dietitian. So it's a real win-win situation for not only our students but also the preceptors in the hospital, because our students come in as almost dietitians, and they they need much less time, they're less needy, they need less supervision, and they're actually more of a helper than a student. And so our evaluation results from simulation have shown, and we haven't published these yet because this is probably, we're going on our 4th year, increased student self-efficacy, increased pass rates on our national exam. High quality preceptors are available to all of our students. We have positive student evaluations and increased perceived medical nutrition therapy skills. So that's all I have to say about simulation. I also advise, I have about 60 advisees, give or take, and that's because our BSU and our CWI and our NIC and our CSI students don't actually count until they register at U of I. So I might see them their freshman year or their sophomore year, but they don't actually come in until they register for U of I, which is a little glitch in our program. And our program has grown since 2008 when I first started here. We started out with 13 students and now we're up to 20, consistently growing, which is in keeping with our mission. This is an example of how our community outreach and how we are involved in many different areas in our state on community engagement. You can see the little yellow pins are the community supervised practice areas. Those include areas like WIC, food banks, businesses, public health, diabetes education programs, gardening programs, gleaning programs. I think I mentioned food banks, and some of our newest programs, which are with the tribe, which we're doing wellness programs with the tribe. This is really important because under the Affordable Health Care Act, there's a huge emphasis on prevention and accountability. And so we're trying to get our students really, really involved in providing that prevention, education, and we're involved in a lot of wellness programs. We're also working with Parks and Recreation in Boise, and I think we might be working with Bigelow Tea later on in November. Clinical practice sites you'll also see are in the red areas. We have 14 sites, so we have 18 community sites, those are 18 contracts too. We have 14 clinical sites, those are 14 contracts that we have to have in place. And you can see they're central in the Spokane, northern Idaho area, although we do go up to Sandpoint. And then down in the Boise area, we cross over and go into Oregon. And our management supervised practices are in hospitals and schools, and they're indicated by the green dots on the screen. 14 sites there as well. So we think that we are meeting the one of the missions of the university with expansion. And for those of you who are not familiar, the University of Idaho is the state's land-grant research university. From this distinctive origin and identity comes our commitment to enhance scientific, economic, social, legal, cultural assets of our state and develop solutions for complex problems facing society. And so I highlighted this area because this is really what we're involved in. We deliver on this commitment through focused excellence in teaching, research, outreach, and engagement in a collaborative environment at our residential main campus and our regional centers, our extension offices, and research facilities throughout the state. And for us, it's our community partnerships throughout the state. We're also involved in, I didn't mention this in this sort of sidebar, we're also very much involved in media in northern Idaho and in southern Idaho. All of our students write for the Coeur d'Alene Press. In the fall, they have to do at least one newspaper article. And some of them are involved in our channel, that really want to be involved in media, can do Channel 7 appearances in the Boise area. This is an example and pictures of Cooking Matters. We have strong partnerships with our food banks in northern Idaho and southern Idaho. I just met with northern Idaho this morning, where we do something called Cooking Matters. Cooking Matters is a phenomenal community nutrition education program where we teach children how to cook with food bank foods. And so the food bank donates the foods, and we go into after school programs or boys and girls clubs, and we teach children how to cook. And it's amazing what they'll eat. I mean, amazing to see them eating vegetables. In that one photograph, they're actually putting together these veggie tortillas, and they devour them. So it's always great to see. And they're shopping in the food bank. A couple things about scholarly activity, and then I'm going to talk about my research, which is kind of exciting, at least for me. Scholarly activity, I have written quite a bit in the last 6 years, besides besides public articles for the press, which don't count for scholarly activity. I've also written a textbook chapter for food and ecology. It's a food science textbook from Jones and Bartlett. I don't know if you're using it, Katie, or not this year.
Maybe next spring.
Maybe next spring. It's a pretty good book. It's sort of an ecological view of food, and it's a very green-friendly book. So I wrote the chapter on sugar. I've written 7 journal articles, 3 abstract poster sessions, 1 national presentation, and 2 international presentations, and wrote 1 large NIH grant, which is what I'm going to probably spend the remainder of the time talking about. You have an example, you have one of our publications in front of you, and again, when I say me, I have this team that I work with, Martha Radel in Boise, and the College of Arts and Architecture, Lori Wall is, where did she go? Yes, in the corner. Lori, it's been great to work with. We have done they've just done a phenomenal job at this, what I'm going to show you. But anyway, that was the beginning of our NIH grant where we did focus groups. We concentrated on diabetes, young adults with diabetes, because individuals, once they're 18, they are no longer under pediatric care, and they have diabetes, they fall off the grid, and they're the highest risk group that have diabetes. And in fact, some new research is coming out showing that those with type 2 diabetes live 10 years less than those with type 1. And that's a pretty new thing for us. We used to think of type 1 as being brittle and being high risk, but now type 2 is a big risk factor. So we concentrated on it with young adults. They fall off the grid in terms of care. They no longer have mom and dad to take care of them. They no longer have pediatricians to take care of them, and they no longer have money. So they're a really, really high risk group, and sometimes they forget that they have diabetes. And they like to party. Did I mention that? So this world is it's called Learn Diabetes Meal Planning Skills in a Virtual World. So in our study, we have another slide. Yeah, we looked at the current situation, and we developed components of a diabetes virtual world to teach meal planning. So we have components that are healthy diabetes plate. We have an equipment kitchen. We have a recipe kitchen, a buffet, and a restaurant. And before I talk about that, I'll talk about our original study, because this was an offshoot from the original study. So this is where when you enter, you come to the information center in a virtual world, which is the aisle of information. You can see that there's a ton of diabetes information that they can download recipes. Specifically, the problems that we identified, just to sum up that article in front of you in couple bullet points, is when it comes to diet, they didn't know how to carb count. They didn't know really how to cook. They didn't know how to manage weight. They were eating out a lot. They were drinking a lot. They had a lot of questions about dietary supplements, a lot of questions about other herbal remedies like cinnamon. How does cinnamon affect blood sugar? Things like that they didn't know about, and they also didn't know how to handle sick days. Some of their barriers were eating out with friends. They wanted to eat out at fast food restaurants and didn't know how. They wanted to go to sit-down restaurants and didn't know what to order to keep them within their meal plan. They absolutely had trouble when going through a buffet. They didn't know how to eat at parties, and they didn't know what to do about consuming alcohol. When eating at home, they had minimum food preparation and cooking skills, and they had problems staying within a food budget. And so overall, they had problems staying within their diet prescription. So this is an example of the collaboration. We collaborated with the College of Arts and Architecture and Design, Humphreys Diabetes Center, which is in Boise, Kootenai Medical Center in Coeur d'Alene, the Rockwood Clinic in Spokane, and additional FCS faculty is Lori and Martha, as I already mentioned. The situation and our response was that meal planning is critical for diabetes management. Young adults have difficulty and planning meals. Young adults have difficulty preparing meals. Young adults are comfortable in a digital environment. They're almost all digitally wired in. And 81% of 18 to 28-year-olds play video games. We knew that. We knew that young adults enjoy interacting in a 3D virtual world. So consequently, we created a virtual diabetes world using the plate to teach diabetes and menu and planning preparation. We developed an equipment kitchen and recipe kitchen and a dining out area, which includes a buffet and a restaurant. And prior to this, we also developed a diabetes education curriculum, which I don't have a slide on. We developed a diabetes curriculum where we taught in the virtual world versus face-to-face, and we also had counseling sessions in the virtual world versus face-to-face. This is the Healthy Diabetes Plate, which I've already mentioned, and it's very similar to my plate, only the fruit is over on the left-hand side. It's a separate component, but we teach to fill the plate half with vegetables and non-starchy vegetables, a little bit of lean protein, starch and grains in the lower left-hand, about 1/4, and then milk and yogurt and fruit. So everything comes back to that. In our study design, we had 97 subjects out of 250. We recruited out of 250, we got 97. 43 were male, 54 were female. 79 had type 1 diabetes and 18 had type 2 diabetes. For some reason, we had a low participation level of type 2. Our intervention was 6 sessions, which included 4 classes and 2 group counseling sessions. We had a control group that was not planned for. It was a group of men who decided they wanted to have their A1Cs tested and their BMI calculated, and they wanted to get the gift card for $20, but they never wanted to go to the classes. So it was our kind of a de facto control group that we used. And so it turned out to be interesting. 3 data periods were collected. We did a baseline, we did a 3 months, and we did a 6 months. And again, oops, that slide is, I don't know if you can see that very well. We have virtual, and then we have so this is a virtual classroom setting, and this is our Second Life. So you can see on in this area right here, avatars, people who were real with their avatars would come and listen to the lectures, and the people who would give the information was a nurse and a dietitian from Humphreys Diabetes Center. The counseling sessions were also 2 sessions at a set time, and the fireside, they were either live, face-to-face, or in what we call the fireside chat area. And we picked the fireside chat area because in our focus groups, it became apparent that camps were really, really important to young people when they had diabetes because they didn't feel alone. That was a very significant part of their lives were diabetes summer camps. So when we designed this, and we designed it based off what they told us in the focus groups, we designed it around the fireside chat area. Okay, so what did we find out? We found out that face-to-face actually attended 4.2 of the 6 sessions on average, and virtual only came to 2.7 sessions, and that was a big surprise because we thought with the virtual world, people would be more likely to come because they could, they could hook up to in the library, at home, wherever they were. But that didn't exactly happen. They were very, very busy. Another thing that happened is that we had recorded these with Camtasia, and so they could have viewed the sessions at another time, but they didn't. So that was another surprise for us. So actually there was a significant difference here in face-to-face attendance, significantly more sessions than the virtual. The overall evaluation of the diabetes programs face-to-face and virtual was, they were rated, the real world face-to-face rated the program a little bit higher than virtual, but it was not significant. So overall, they're both effective methods of delivering, but one was a tiny bit higher. The other thing that we looked at, and we actually have another paper that looked at the psychosocial aspects of this study, but we saw that the number of friends added at the end of the study, they made 1 friend, and it really didn't matter, virtual or face-to-face, it was about the same. So our theory is that we use the trans-theoretical model and Banduris' self-efficacy related to intentions. And so we took that theory and then we, based upon our initial study, we expanded that into developing the certain components of the world that we are now opening up to the public in less than a month. And so I'll show you what these are. So Second Life is an area that anybody anybody can join for free. You will be able to get into our diabetes world for free. You can go in with your avatar and look at the equipment kitchen and the recipe kitchen. where they each have gaming aspects to them. You can bring family members. It's a great way to teach. Teach about nutrition. In the kitchen area, we have a bakeware and equipment in the kitchen where people can learn what different bakeware does, what the kitchen equipment does, so they get to, it's sort of an interactive area here. They walk up to the recipe kitchen and they can select either any one of these recipes that they want to make, and they make them virtually. And the idea is if they make them virtually, they will then try them in the real world. So we have a kitchen, they actually go gather their ingredients, put it out on the table, and they prepare the recipe. The only thing they don't do is eat it. And the gaming part of this is that how does this recipe fit into their plate, their menu plan. And so when they prepare the recipe at the end, we'll see exactly where it fits on their plate. There's also a dining out area. And the dining out area has the buffet line, and you would not believe how many foods are on this line. And Lori, you guys did an amazing job. You walk through the buffet line, and again, you have to select foods from the buffet to fit on your plate. But before you go, before you enter this area, you have to stick in your meal plan. And every meal plan is individualized to that individual. So what you're doing is you're walking through the buffet line, and it's measuring what you select against your individualized meal plan. And so you can see up in the left-hand corner here is this avatar, my avatar, went through and selected foods. She selected fish, I think potatoes, broccoli, some yogurt, and I don't really know what that, what is that? That's fresh peaches. Yeah, yogurt, spinach, roasted potatoes, and fish. And so you can see how that then pops up into the plate. And then it will actually rate it against her individual meal plan. The same holds true in the dining out area, which is the restaurant area. And again, her meal plan is there, but she opens up this menu. I don't know if I have an example. Yeah. These menu items were, they really look like something that you would get in an Applebee's or, trying to think of the favorite restaurants, Red Robin, some of those restaurants, dining out restaurants. So you choose from the menu here, and then again it compares, you can see this avatar sitting there, it compares that against your meal plan. So just to summarize, we are we are finishing testing, we have finished testing, we still have some data. We will be, we've alpha tested in December, we beta tested in April, it continued through the summer. We have a new additional area, which is the fitness area, and again, with the laws of intention, we have the fitness area where we will be expanding on that area with another grant. We have this, our world is open for the next 2 years, and so again, we'll be opening up for feedback at the end of September, but the fitness area is another area where we'll be able to ride bikes, swim. If I have a picture of that here. Yeah, this is the area, the fitness area that's under development still. I think it might have changed a little bit from this when I did this photo. Upstairs is the yoga area, but we're actually going to have a gaming component in here where people will actually be able to even be on teams and be able to log their exercise time, and again, carry that out into the real world. Which brings up the next point, that if we were to, one of the aha things that we've learned from this whole grant and project is that Second Life is one area, but we need to link to the outside world. And so we would like to link to Facebook so that people could be competing in world and then linking that to Facebook so that they could be also connecting with each other outside of that area. People really need to be connected and know each other prior to going into Second Life. So both worlds should be, this is our summary, both worlds should be combined, meeting first in face-to-face or real world, and or maybe through Facebook or connecting through other social networks, and then hook up in a virtual world for activities and games. Activities and games should encourage social interaction and sharing and support among virtual world users. And the University of Idaho is developing a virtual world to teach individuals diabetes meal planning in a variety of settings. And the evaluation of this world will be completed in 2013 and will become open to the public. And that's the address if you'd like to go there. That is my research agenda. We will be applying for a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation grant to continue our gaming aspect of the world. And so, do you have any questions? Am I good on time?
Yes.
Perfect. Questions?
As I was reading the research, I was wondering what kind of drew you to this focus area, the virtual world and diabetes management too.
Diabetes management, because I like to look at trends, and so I knew that diabetes was a big area. And Martha also works in the diabetes. She's sort of my research partner on this grant. So with Martha's expertise and then my interest in being trendy, which when you look at obesity, you know, heading up, you know, really climbing in the next few years, consequently diabetes is climbing as well, I knew that it was an area that there needed to be a lot of research. I will tell you the other thing that why I chose this area is because we knew the Affordable Health Care Act was coming down the line, and under the Affordable Health Care Act, physicians, primary care docs are going to be the medical home. They don't have a lot of resources for diabetes management, and so they'll be able to tap into this as an education resource for their patients. And so we wanted something. Telemedicine was out there, diabetes was out there, affordable health care, and this sort of encompasses them all together in one application, or a pertinent application. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, and I meet with a lot of college students who struggle with exactly what you were talking about in the research, and so I'm looking forward to implementing this and seeing if the students will appreciate, you know, going to that virtual world.
The challenge with Second Life is that it has a pretty sharp learning curve. So that will be the challenge. Some people who are gamers will just take to it just like that, and some people like me, who is not a gamer, will have more challenges. So,
Deepa, are you going to market it then to physicians, or how do you plan to do that?
yeah, we like to market it to physicians. We've already started talking about it a little bit, and Cambria, who's the mother organization of Blue Cross, they are developing this, it's a case management program for physicians where, so for example, so we've talked to them, we've been in talks with them about it. So if you have a patient, if you're a primary care physician and your patient is coming in, your payment and reimbursement is going to be dependent upon the success of your patient. So their A1C is coming down, their BMI coming down if they're type 2, etc. So they're looking at effective ways to educate. So this is really good for them because they can send their patients here without having to incur any costs. So they're very interested in having this as one of the options. So when your patient comes up and you write in your DRG code, says diabetes, then there will be this whole list of different resources that you can refer them to, and we would like this to be one of them. Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit on the use of simulation and the need behind that use within the dietetics program?
And dietetics program. There's also a great opportunity in Second Life for simulation in dietetics. Huge, because a lot of dietetics programs are, well, I've already mentioned that we are losing sites for preceptors, with preceptors. We're losing, with HIPAA regulations, they can only take in so many of our students. I can't go in there and monitor them because I'm not an employee at the hospital. But this area of the virtual area and the simulation is an area that we can replicate hospital clinical experiences. So it's really useful on that end. The other thing about simulation is if we can translate that into the computer, it can help meet a need for our distance education programs and having distance education internship programs through simulation. Did that answer your question? Sort of? Okay.
So in one of the articles that you were writing about, it was talking about children being a really huge staple in learning in the beginning what they need to do so that when they grow up they can either teach their parents or they can be prepared. So do you think that you would want to extend simulation to younger audience?
I don't wanna do it through Second Life. We need to find another, venue for that, because Second Life, when we first started out, Second Life had a children's area to it. That's how long we've been working on this project, in 2008 or 9. But then they got rid of that children's area, and it's, Second Life is very risque. There's a lot of components to it that are sexual and adult rated, and so I wouldn't wanna do anything in Second Life at this time for children. But yeah, that is definitely, when we talk about gaming and avatars, that's definitely something that they could learn a lot from. But I'm not sure that I would, or parents would want them communicating with each other. I mean, this is worldwide. Anybody around the world can use this program. And Martha and I just got back from presenting this in Chicago at an international diabetes conference, and so there's interest in it, in communicating, from all over. Yeah, so. Any other questions? Yes?
Would you ever think about taking this technology kind of past Second Life and more into a personal space where someone who maybe wasn't really interested in the kind of like Second Life could still simulate these things on their iPhone or on their iPad at home without having to be in that virtual world?
Like an app.
Yeah, like an app.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked
Second
about
Life.
apps a lot. The apps that we've talked about are more like, well, they have apps for diabetes. They have apps where you log your blood sugar, and that's instantly communicated with your physician. One of the things from our focus groups that we thought was really interesting is that young adults with diabetes, what they want from their physicians they're that instant gratification group. They want instant contact with their physicians, so that when their blood sugar is 650, they want someone they can call immediately and say, my blood sugar is this high, I think I should do this, is that okay? And they want their physician to contact them back. So we have they want their mom and dad. That's what they really want. So we've talked about having those types of applications where they can instantly upload and communicate to their physicians. And again, that's another area that Cambria is looking at. How can they communicate? Because their physician is truly going to be responsible for their care, and their reimbursement is dependent on their care, their A1Cs. You would think that the physician's going to want to know immediately when something like that happens and be able to send something back to them too. So it's a two-way street. So I see more and more opportunity for developing some really innovative applications like that. We've also talked about developing an application where you sort of linked to a GPS sort of application, like if I'm going up to Coeur d'Alene for dinner tonight and I want to know, and so I could plug in my meal plan to my little program, and it would tell me all the restaurants in the area that I could eat at and what I should eat that would fit into my meal plan. And that sounds really far out, but it's not so far, because now with the new food labeling things that's happening, you can take a look at a lot. I mean, who orders pastries from Starbucks anymore since they started labeling, right?
Or
When we see 450 calories
Yeah.
on that, we don't get it anymore.
I was going to
So.
say, there are some weight loss groups that already have apps that are doing that kind of thing for you, so.
And one step further, Sonia, is we can have, a total diabetes application where then it will tell you where walking trails are in Coeur d'Alene, and safe paths or bike trails or whatever. So we've kind of talked about that. And
That's good. Have you seen, and this isn't so much a question, but it's along the same line, on the evening news last night, the robots that are being used in hospitals now, and they're being used in small hospitals where they don't have like cardiologists, or they don't have as many specialists in residence at that hospital, but there might be one 50 miles, 85 miles away. And so they gave this example of this one woman, and she said, sure, go ahead and use her. And she was having a stroke. Well, they were able to bring her in. She came into the hospital. They connected her to the monitors, which immediately connected to a physician that was at home 50, 60 miles away. He read the stats. His face, it was almost like
a virtual virtual
It wasn't
position.
Skype, it was more like FaceTime,
Mhm.
and he comes right up, I mean, it's a FaceTime chat with the doctor, and he gives her the, you know, the visual kind of test for a stroke of, you know, raise your hands and touch your nose and that kind of thing. He took her through that and knew, without having the full results of the test back yet, of what was going on, immediately told the attending what to start with her, and I guess basically saved her life. But it's something that, so again, what you guys are talking about, and having this, you know, second life, but being able to communicate with your physician that way, it's
and
not.
Ours is sort of more gaming oriented,
Right, but it's still.
And we have, that's one thing that we do with our students in terms of simulation. One of the activities that we have them do is we have them do a consult over Skype, because that's telemedicine. And so we do actually incorporate that in, and we might need to look at more FaceTime, I don't know, other applications, but yeah,
But this was just amazing to watch this little you know, it looked like R2-D2 going down the hospital halls, but,
That's pretty
you know,
cool.
yeah.
Very cool.
Any more questions? Thank you,
Can we
Sue.
ask a question in Boise?
Okay.
Just one.
Hi, Harriet.
Just one. Hi, do you have any thoughts about how to increase their return to gain more information? And I was wondering if it's possible for them to earn credits. For instance, maybe they could earn grain to feed their horse on Farmville or something like that. Make it all within the electronic environment.
What are they called?
Well, we were gonna do a perk, like a follow
Yep,
pet.
yeah, what are they called? They're called badges.
Oh, badges.
Yeah.
We're gonna do badges.
Yeah, I'm looking at Lori in the back of the room here, cause there's all these different names. We were gonna have them, yes, we were gonna do that, Harriet, we're gonna have them, and they can earn badges. So in the exercise area, we were going to have them earn badges or perks, and perks are like little pets. So if you get, you know, do so much with your exercise log, then you get a little dog that can follow you around, or a little kitty on your shoulder, or whatever. Yeah, those are really popular.
On your shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, bird on your shoulder.
Yeah. Any other questions from Boise or Coeur d'Alene?
Sia, this is Martha. I was wondering if you could give us a couple more examples of what you're doing in simulation. You showed us that great video clip with the tube feed. What other diseases do you cover when you're doing simulation?
We covered, and this actually was based on research. We brought preceptors together about 6 summers ago, and we actually told them, they were partners with us. Before we even entered into simulation, we brought our preceptors in to make sure that we wouldn't cut our own throats and lose sites. And so we brought them in, and they actually helped design the simulation experience by telling us what were the areas that they thought were the most needed. So we have wound healing, we have diabetes type 1, diabetes type 2, we have a head injury, we have cancer, we have a cardiac, renal. Did I miss any?
I think you're covering most
I think
of them.
7. There are 7 areas. Oh, and there were some had multiple problems, so they had some comorbidities. So one of the areas, for example, with the head injury, he had a dysphagia, and so we have to deal with, you know, some compound issues. So we're always working on this. So we're expanding simulation, and we're actually having add-ons, so that we're having some add-ons so that you can add on more difficult cases. So if you've got some students who are just incredibly bright and want the challenge, you can have an add-on. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
I want to know if
Bye-bye.
activity in the second life, if I did activity that
So
way.
for student, for this FCS 501, you do have a little tiny note. I am collecting them before you leave the room today. So if you don't have them, here is a. Okay, then just tear a piece of paper. There's only 2 questions on that piece of paper. One is, list one or two things. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
List one or two things you learned from today, and list one or two questions or comments about this presentation overall.